Somewhere around midnight, in a small dark village 600 years ago, an entire household wakes up. Not because something is wrong, not because of a noise or a fire or a thief. They wake up on purpose, because that is simply what people did. And after an hour or so of quiet talk and prayer and small chores in the dark, they lie back down and go to sleep a second time. Good evening, and welcome back to the Sleepy Archive. Tonight's story is about the one thing you're hopefully about to do yourself: sleep. But sleep as it was in the Middle Ages, which turns out to be a stranger, warmer, more crowded, and altogether more sociable affair than anything we know today. As always, there is nothing you need to do here. You don't need to remember the names, or the dates, or the strange Latin words. This is history told slowly, the kind you're allowed to fall asleep to. In fact, tonight more than ever, falling asleep halfway through is not a failure. It is the entire point. We're going to spend one whole night in a village in England, sometime late in the 1300s, from the moment the light fails in the evening to the grey hour before dawn when the roosters take over. So settle in. Let your shoulders sink. Let your breathing slow down. Whenever you're ready, close your eyes. Let's begin. Imagine a village of perhaps 30 houses scattered along a muddy lane, somewhere in the low hills of England, in the autumn of the year 1390. The houses are small and brown and hunched, with walls of timber and clay and roofs of thick grey thatch. Smoke rises from holes in those roofs. There are no chimneys here, not in houses like these, and the sun is going down. In one of these houses lives a man named Thomas. He is a ploughman, a tenant farmer in his middle 30s, broad in the shoulder and slow in his speech, with land enough to feed his family and obligations enough to keep him humble. With him live his wife, Maud, their 3 children, and, at the far end of the house, behind a low wattle partition, 2 oxen, a cow, and an uncertain number of chickens. For Thomas, the end of the day is not a choice. It is the weather. When the light goes, the work stops. There is no lamp bright enough, and no lamp cheap enough, to plough by, or thresh by, or mend harness by. Candles exist, of course, but a good wax candle costs real money, and even the smoky tallow ones, made of rendered animal fat, are not a thing you burn for pleasure. So the day ends when the sky says so. And in October, the sky says so early. Listen. From the church tower at the centre of the village, a bell begins to ring, slow and even and familiar. This is the curfew bell. The word comes from the French couvre-feu, cover the fire, and it means exactly what it says. When the curfew rings, every household is expected to bank its fire for the night, to rake the embers together and cover them over with ash or with a clay lid, so that no stray spark can escape while the village sleeps. It is easy to hear the word curfew and imagine soldiers in the streets and people locked indoors against their will. But the medieval curfew is not really about controlling people. It is about fire. Because these houses, timber frames, straw roofs, wooden floors, hay in the lofts, are, from a fire's point of view, carefully arranged piles of fuel. A single untended hearth on a windy night can take a whole street before anyone wakes. Whole towns burned this way, more than once, and everyone knew the stories. So the bell rings, and Maud takes the iron rake and pulls the glowing embers of the cooking fire into a tidy heap and buries them, gently, like a gardener planting something, under a soft grey blanket of ash. In the morning, those embers will still be alive, and the fire can be coaxed back without striking a single new spark. The fire does not die at night. It sleeps just like everyone else. With the fire banked, the house begins to close itself up, the way a flower closes at dusk. Thomas goes out one last time into the blue half-light to look at the sky and the animals and the gate, the small evening inspection that farmers have performed in every century for as long as there have been farmers. The oxen are in their end of the house, breathing slow and warm. The chickens have put themselves to bed in the rafters, because chickens, unlike people, have never needed to be told. The pig is in its sty against the wall. The gate is tied. The world is in order, or at least as much of the world as Thomas owns. Inside, Maud sets the wooden shutters into the two small windows and pegs them fast. There is no glass in this house. Glass is for churches and for men whose names have French in them. A shuttered window keeps out wind and rain and most of the cold, and it also keeps out the last of the light. The door is barred with a beam of oak, not out of any great fear. The village is quiet, and everyone knows everyone. But because a barred door is simply what a sensible household does, the way you lock your front door tonight without thinking of any particular thief, and with the shutters pegged and the door barred and the fire buried, the inside of the house becomes very, very dark, a darkness most of us have honestly never experienced. This is the first thing to understand about medieval sleep. It happened in real darkness, the kind with weight. It is worth pausing here, in the dark, to think about light itself. For us, light is so cheap it has become invisible. We flood whole empty parking lots with it all night, just in case. But for most of human history, light after sunset was one of the most expensive things an ordinary family could buy. Thomas's house has, for lighting, the following inventory: one hearth, currently asleep under its ash, a few rushlights, dried meadow rushes, peeled and dipped in waste kitchen fat, which burn with a small, leaning, smoky flame for perhaps half an hour each, and one tallow candle, kept on a shelf for emergencies and holy days. A rushlight gives just enough light to find the ladder, or check a sleeping child, or finish a row of spinning if your fingers already know the work by heart. It gives nowhere near enough light to read by, which matters very little, since no one in this house can read. An hour of decent artificial light in Thomas's world costs roughly an hour of Thomas's labor. Imagine paying an hour's wages every time you flicked a switch. So darkness is not an inconvenience to be defeated. It is a season of the day, as real as winter, and you plan your life around it in exactly the same way. When historians say medieval people went to bed early, this is what they mean. The night was not empty. The night was simply closed. Now, in the last usable light, the household draws together into the middle of the one main room. Supper was eaten earlier, while the fire was still open, pottage, as it nearly always is. A thick standing porridge of barley and oats and beans and whatever the garden gave, up that week, eaten warm from wooden bowls, with dark bread to push it. Now comes the small, soft hour that every culture seems to invent. The hour between supper and sleep. Maud spins wool by feel, the spindle ticking quietly as it turns. Thomas mends a strap of harness, mostly with his thumbs. The two older children, a boy of 10 and a girl of 7, are playing some unkillable child's game involving pebbles and a great deal of whispering. The baby is already asleep against Maud's shoulder. There is talk, but it is slow talk, with long, comfortable holes in it. Who owes what? Whether the rain will hold off for the threshing, a thing the miller said, repeated and considered and gently disapproved of. If this scene feels familiar, it should. Strip away the phones and the screens from a modern evening, and what remains is more or less exactly this. A family in a warm room, in a circle of dim light, slowly running out of words together. Some things about the night have changed beyond recognition. This hour is not one of them. Outside, the village is performing the same ritual, house by house. Shutters knock softly into their frames, one lane over. A dog states its position on some matter twice and is satisfied. Someone calls a child in that long two-note call that every mother in history has somehow known without being taught. The church bell has gone still. The smoke from the roof holes thins as fire after fire is banked and buried, and the darkness comes up out of the ground. First in the ditches, then in the lanes, then everywhere, until the village is just a cluster of darker shapes against a dark hill, under a sky that is still, faintly, the colour of old pewter. There are no street lights to come on. There are no streets, really, just the lane and the paths and the great open fields beyond, lying in long silver strips under the rising mist. If you stood in the lane now, you would hear the village rather than see it. A cough through a wall, the clink of a pot being set down, the oxen shifting their feet in the straw behind the house's inner walls. A goose somewhere with an opinion. By the time the last grey light is gone from the sky, nearly every soul in the village is indoors, behind a barred door, within an arm's reach of their entire family. The working day is over. But the night, the medieval night, with all its strange furniture, is only just beginning. Before we follow Thomas to bed, it is worth saying plainly how differently medieval people felt about the dark. For them, night was not just the absence of light. It was widely understood to be a different territory altogether, a time that belonged, in the old phrase, to God and to the dead and to other things, and only on loan to the living. The night air itself was thought to be mildly dangerous, damp and heavy and bad for the body, which is one reason windows were shuttered so firmly, even in summer, and the dark beyond the door was populated, in the common imagination, with a whole administration of spirits, demons, wandering souls, and the unbaptized dead, none of whom you wish to meet by the gate. We can smile at this, but notice what it did. It gave the night a shape. It gave everyone a powerful, shared reason to be home, together. Behind the door, when the light failed, night scattered no one. Night gathered everyone. And there was comfort on the inside of that fear. The barred door, the banked fire, the murmured prayer, the whole family breathing in one room. Every one of these was a small ceremony that said, "We are in, the night is out, and there is a wall between." You are about to do a quieter version of the same thing tonight. Door locked, lights off, the world shut out. Some ceremonies survive their explanations. And now, it is time to look at the bed itself, because almost nothing about it is what you expect. So, the bed. If the word makes you picture a four-poster with curtains and carved oak, put that picture aside. That bed exists in this century, but it lives in a manor house, and we will visit it later. Thomas's bed is something much simpler and much older. At its heart, it is a sack. A long linen sack, the size of a person and a half, stuffed tight with straw from the autumn threshing, or better, with heather or bracken or dried bedstraw, a meadow plant, whose small dry flowers smell faintly of honey and are believed, correctly as it happens, to discourage fleas. This sack, the paillasse, the pallet, lies not on the bare earth floor, but on a low frame of rough wooden boards, or on a platform built against the wall, to lift the sleeper out of the floors cold and damp, away from the draught that slides under every door. On top of the straw sack, if the household is doing well, there may be a second, softer mattress stuffed with wool flock, or with feathers saved patiently from years of plucked geese. Thomas's family has one of these, and it is precious, listed in wills of the time, right after the land and the animals. When a man in this century says he has hit the hay, he is not using a figure of speech. The straw is real, it rustles when he turns over, and once a year, when the new harvest comes, the old straw goes out to the pig, and the sack is filled fresh, and for one glorious week, the whole bed smells like a summer field. On top of the mattress, the layers tell you exactly how the family is doing, like rings in a tree. First, a linen sheet, coarse, hand-spun, the colour of oatmeal, woven by Maud herself, or by her mother before her. Linen is the skin layer, soft enough against the body, and washable, which matters more than you might think. Then the blankets, woven wool, heavy as a sleeping dog, in the undid browns and greys of the sheep themselves. Then, on cold nights, anything else the household can spare, cloaks, spare gowns, the day's outer clothes spread flat for their weight, and on the very top, in the better houses, a coverlet, perhaps even one with colour in it, red or green, the single brightest object the family owns. Understand what this pile represents. A good feather bed, with its sheets and blankets and coverlet, could be worth more than every other piece of furniture in the house combined. It took years to assemble, feather by feather, fleece by fleece. Beds are treasures in this world. They are named in wills, left solemnly to wives and eldest sons, fought over by grieving relatives. 200 years after tonight, a playwright in Stratford will famously leave his wife the second best bed, and historians will still be arguing about what he meant by it 5 centuries later. Thomas does not have a second best bed. He has one. And tonight, as on every night, it must hold considerably more people than you are imagining. Because here is the part that surprises everyone. The private bed, one person or one couple, alone in a room, barely exists in this world. Sleep is communal. Tonight, Thomas's bed will hold Thomas, and Maud, and the baby, tucked in the crook of Maud's arm. The 2 older children sleep on their own smaller pallet, an arm's length away, close enough to touch, close enough to hear, all night, the comfortable proof of everyone else's breathing. If Thomas's widowed mother still lived, she would be in this room. If they kept a servant girl, she would be in this room. A visiting cousin, a hired harvest hand, a travelling friar caught by rain, into the room, onto a pallet, into the warm arithmetic of the household. There is exactly one room for sleeping, because there is exactly one room. And nobody in this house has ever, in their entire life, slept out of earshot of another human being. Not once. The idea would strike them, not as luxurious, but as eerie. Sleeping alone is what happens to hermits and to the dead. And there are good reasons bodies pile together. Warmth. First, a shared bed in an unheated house in January is not a custom. It is a survival strategy. But also safety and comfort and the simple medieval conviction that a person is a thing that belongs in a group, awake or asleep, the way a sheep belongs in a flock. The modern bedroom, silent, private, one door, one sleeper, would have seemed to them like a beautifully furnished exile. Now let us adrift for a moment up the social ladder, out of Thomas's village, to the manor house 2 miles off, where the lord of these fields is also going to bed. His bed is the 4-poster you pictured earlier, and it is magnificent. A carved oak frame, strung with a lattice of hemp ropes, that must be tightened with a wooden key every few weeks, because they sag under the body's weight as they stretch. On the ropes, not one mattress but several, in careful order. Straw at the bottom, then wool, then, crowning everything, a deep feather bed into which the sleeper sinks as into risen dough. Sheets of fine, bleached linen, furs, an embroidered coverlet, and all around the bed, hanging from the frame, curtains, heavy wool curtains, drawn at night to close the bed in completely until it becomes a small, dark, airless room within the room, warm as a nest, private as a confessional. This bed is, quite officially, the most valuable object in the house. Kings travel with their beds. Queens receive ambassadors in them. The great state beds of the age cost more than warships, and the bedchamber is where the realm's actual business gets whispered. And yet, notice, even here the Lord does not sleep alone. His body servant sleeps in the same chamber, on a low truckle bed that rolls out from under the great one like a drawer. Down in the hall, the household servants sleep in rows on benches and pallets among the embers and the dogs. Wealth in this world buys you a softer bed. It does not buy you an empty room. Nobody wants one. Here is a stranger detail while we are in the manor house. Look at the bed again. At the head of it, a great wedge of bolsters and pillows, stacked so high that the sleeper lies not flat, but propped, half sitting. Many people in this century, especially the wealthy, deliberately sleep at a slope, reclined against cushions, in a posture somewhere between lying down and sitting up in a chair. Why? Partly medicine. The learned doctors teach that lying completely flat lets the body's humours pool and stagnate, and that a raised head keeps the vapours of digestion from rising into the brain and troubling your dreams. Partly comfort. In a smoky house, the air is clearer lower down, but a propped chest breathes easier all night. And partly, perhaps, something older and harder to name, a faint feeling that lying flat on your back, stretched out, hands still, is the posture of the tomb, the effigy, the grave. The living sleep propped, the dead lie flat. Thomas, in his village bed, has no tower of pillows, but even he has a bolster, a firm sausage of cloth stuffed with straw, raising his head and shoulders off the level. The completely flat sleep that we consider normal is, historically speaking, the odd one out. So, if tonight you find yourself adjusting your pillow, puffing it up, propping yourself, just so, you are tuning an instrument that has been played for a very, very long time. We should be honest though, before the picture gets too cozy. Not everyone in this world has a bed at all. The poorest cottagers, the landless labourers, the widow at the lane's end, sleep on loose straw or rushes spread on the floor, wrapped in their day clothes, and whatever single blanket exists, their feet toward the banked fire, their backs against each other. There is even a word for the very poorest level of bedding. To sleep on the bare boards, or the bare earth, with nothing under you at all, is to go to a hard bed, and the phrase still carries that memory. In the towns, a traveller without money sleeps in the straw of an inn's stable, or on the benches of an alehouse if the keeper is kind, or under a market stall with his pack for a pillow. Monasteries keep a guest house, and by their rule must take in the poor wayfarer, a bench, a fire, bread, and a blessing. And yet, even at this hardest end of the scale, the old rule holds: no one sleeps alone. The poor sleep in heaps, in rows, in piles by the fire, sharing warmth, because warmth is the one thing that costs nothing once it exists. A historian once wrote that the history of winter is mostly the history of other people's bodies. It is worth remembering, as you lie tonight, in a bed that is yours alone, heated by a furnace, under a duvet, that by the standards of nearly every human who ever lived, you are sleeping like a king. Better than a king, in fact. Kings had colder rooms and far more company. One last thing about the medieval bed, before we climb into it. It was not only for sleeping. The bed is where people are born, literally almost everyone. It is where the sick are nursed, where marriages formally begin, where wills are dictated to the priest while the family stands around, and where, at the end, people expect and even hope to die the good death at home in one's own bed, with everyone gathered. The bed is a stage for every act of the human play. Important visitors might be received by a lady sitting up in her great bed, dressed and jewelled, the curtains drawn back like theatre curtains. Court cases mention the bed constantly as the place where words were spoken, promises made, secrets overheard through the inevitable thin walls. Because the bed was where life happened, it gathered ceremony around it the way the hearth did. Making the bed properly was a real skill in great houses, an actual office with rules. The layers in order, the corners just so, the coverlet smoothed with a rod kept for the purpose. And at the humble end, in Thomas's house, the same instinct. Maud shakes and turns the straw mattress, plumps the bolster, spreads the blankets square every single day, not because anyone will see it, because a made bed is a kept promise. The day may be chaos, but the night, at least, is prepared for. You probably made your bed this morning, or felt vaguely guilty for skipping it. That feeling is 600 years old, older, and now the bed is ready. The hour has come. Let us watch the household actually go to sleep. The last rushlight is guttering. The household begins to undress. This is quickly done because medieval clothing comes off in big, honest pieces. Thomas pulls off his outer tunic and his hose and stands in his long linen shirt, which reaches past the knee. Maud slips off her gown and is in her linen shift, much the same garment. The clothes are not flung anywhere. They are folded or hung on the wall pegs or laid deliberately on top of the blankets, because wool is warmth, and warmth is never off duty. And then, the question historians are always asked, what did they wear to bed? The honest answer is, it varied, exactly as it does now. Many people, perhaps most, slept in that linen shirt or shift, the same one, often, they had worn all day. But sleeping naked was also completely ordinary, common enough that manuscript pictures show it without comment. Husband and wife side by side, under the blanket, bare shoulders above the hem, nightcaps on their heads. naked, in a shared bed, under shared blankets, was warm and unremarkable, and nobody had yet invented the special costume for sleeping. Pajamas are centuries away, waiting in India for the East India Company. What nearly everyone did wear was the nightcap, a close linen coif tied under the chin, because the head is where the warmth leaves, and because everyone firmly believed the night air would give an uncovered head every ailment from earache to madness. Practical, comical, and universal, the whole Middle Ages went to bed dressed mostly in a small hat. Before the bodies go into the bed, the souls are seen to. Maud kneels first, on the rushes by the bed frame, the children beside her, small hands pressed together in the dark. The prayers are short and worn smooth with use. A paternoster, an ave, mumbled at the speed of long habit, the Latin softened into something more like a hum than a language. Then the personal clauses added in plain English at the end, the way you might add a note to a printed form. For the baby's cough, for the rain to hold off 3 more days. For her sister, married away to the next valley. For the soul of her father, 2 winters dead, that he rest quiet. This is not a performance of devotion. It is closer to maintenance, the spiritual version of banking the fire. The day is being closed down properly, all its accounts settled, so that nothing smoulders overnight. And there is one more clause, the one every household says in some form, the genuinely felt one, the prayer for protection through the dark hours. Lighten our darkness, the old words run, and defend us from all perils and dangers of this night. Remember that for these people, the night really is a wilderness that surrounds the house till morning. The prayer is a wall built of words, added to the wall built of oak. Thomas prays too, more briefly, standing, with the slightly transactional air of a busy man keeping current with an important account. Then the children are kissed and rolled into their pallet, the blanket tucked hard under their chins, and one small ritual remains, the one nobody ever wrote poems about. Maud takes the last burning rushlight, shields it with her hand, and sweeps its light slowly across the surface of the big bed. Hunting, fleas, bedbugs, the small rent-paying tenants of every mattress in Europe. It is a fact of this world, accepted at every level of society, that you are never entirely alone in bed. The straw breeds them, the wool harbours them, the warm bodies feed them, and the war against them is nightly, ancient, and conducted without hope of victory, only of acceptable losses. The weapons are these: bed straw and wormwood, and fleabane in the mattress, herbs whose very names are war memorials. Regular shaking and beating of blankets, in the yard, with a stick. The white linen sheet itself, which shows a dark flea against it, the way snow shows a crow, and the candle-lit patrol Maud is making now, thumb and forefinger ready, with the focused calm of a woman who has done this 10,000 times. In the grand houses, it is no different, only better staffed. Servants turn the great mattresses and smoke the bed frames with juniper. Learned men write recipe against bedbugs in the same serious books that discuss the movements of the planets. It would be easy to find this grim. The medieval sleep-eaters did not. A few bites were simply part of the texture of being alive, like weather, like mud, noticed, complained of cheerfully, endured. And there is something almost soothing in the picture, the small light moving over the blankets, the quiet, methodical attention, the bed being made safe, corner by corner, before the family enters it. Every culture has its bedtime patrol. Yours is checking the door, and the alarm, and the phone. Hers has 6 legs. The instinct is identical. And now, at last, the bed receives its family. There is an order to it, unspoken but absolute, like the seating at a table. Maud goes in first, to the wall side, the baby gathered against her. The wall side is the protected side, the women's and children's side, warmest and furthest from the door. Thomas takes the open edge, the side from which a man can rise fast, toward the door, if the night brings anything that needs meeting. He sits on the frame's edge, and the straw mattress speaks under him, a long rustling sigh, like a hedge in wind. He swings his legs in, pulls the great weight of wool over both of them, and the cold sheet begins, slowly, grudgingly, to warm. This moment, the entry into the cold bed, the wait for warmth, is one of the oldest shared human experiences, and in this century it is taken seriously as a craft. On the worst winter nights, a stone is heated by the embers, wrapped in cloth, and sent into the bed ahead of the family like a scout. The wealthy use pans of coals, swept between their sheets by servants. Everyone else uses the method Thomas is using now. Patience, wool, and another person. The children whisper once, twice, and are told once, twice, to sleep. The dog completes 3 circles by the banked fire and collapses with a thump. From the byre end of the house, beyond the partition, comes the slow rhythmic grinding of an ox chewing in the dark, a sound like a great patient machine. And beneath it the smaller rustlings of hens settling on the beam. Maud says one more thing, very quietly, about tomorrow's washing. Thomas answers with a sound that is not quite a word. The house breathes out and goes dark inside its walls. Lie still a moment, in the dark, with them, and just listen, because a medieval house at night is not silent. It is a quiet orchestra. The fire, first, buried but alive, ticking softly under its ash, a knot of wood giving way once with a muffled pop. The timbers of the house itself, cooling after the day, creak one by one, high in the roof, old oak settling its bones. A sound every child here knows and no child fears. Wind fingers the thatch with a long hush, hush. The shutters knock once in their frames and think better of it. The animals are the deep section. The oxen's chewing, slow as tides. A hen's sleepy burble, like water in a narrow pipe. The pig against the outer wall, rearranging itself with brief offended grunts. And the people. The baby's quick light breath against Maud's collarbone. The children's slower tide. Thomas already descending, breath by breath, into the broad-shouldered snore of a man who ploughed 8 hours. A sound Maud will adjust with one practiced elbow, without waking either of them. Mice in the loft straw, conducting their tiny economy. An owl, far off, asking its one question and getting no answer. Here is the thing. Every sound in this house is known. There is not one noise in the night inventory that Maud cannot name, half asleep, without opening her eyes. And that, more than the wool, more than the fire, is what safety sounds like in any century. A strange sound would wake her instantly. None comes. The orchestra plays on, all night, its one long, unhurried piece. You have your own version playing right now. The refrigerator, the traffic, the house ticking. Listen, it's there. Did medieval people have trouble falling asleep? Of course they did. They were people, and their doctors had advice, a great deal of advice. The learned tradition, passed down from the Greeks through the monasteries, treats sleep as one of the 6 pillars of health, alongside food and air and exercise, to be managed with care. First, the rules of timing. Sleep at night, not by day. Daytime naps are viewed with deep suspicion, except for the very young, the very old, and the sick. Do not sleep immediately after eating. Let supper settle first. And go to bed at a regular, honest hour, which, you'll notice, is exactly what the pamphlets in your pharmacy say today. Then, the rules of position, which are wonderfully specific. Begin the night on your right side. The doctors instruct, so the food may descend properly into the stomach's heat. Then turn to the left toward morning, to ease the liver. Never sleep on your back, which invites nightmares and lets harmful vapors pool in the spine. And never, ever, ever sleep on your stomach, which is the posture of gluttony and presses upon the heart. Is any of this true? Mostly not. But notice what it is doing. It is giving the sleepless mind a small, calm procedure to follow. Turn here, breathe so, compose the limbs just so. A ritual against racing thoughts, a liturgy for the body. 600 years before anyone said the words sleep hygiene, the advice was already this. Keep regular hours, eat early, lie on your side, and give your mind something gentle to hold. It worked about as well then as it does now. Which is to say, usually, eventually. And it is working on Thomas. He is gone. Maud follows him within the quarter hour. The house holds its sleepers, and the night begins its first long watch. What happens next would have needed no explanation at all for almost anyone in history before about 1800, and needs a careful one for us. The family is now beginning what they themselves call their first sleep. Not a poetic phrase, a plain technical term, as ordinary to them as the word breakfast is to you. First sleep is the night's opening shift, 3 hours, maybe 4, of deep, heavy, hard-earned unconsciousness, beginning soon after dark. It is understood by everyone, farmer, doctor, priest, that this first sleep is the body's great repair, the deepest and most necessary portion of the night. Thomas, who ploughed from grey light to grey light, drops into it like a stowman into a well. Outside, the village sleeps in the same rhythm. The miller sleeps. The smith sleeps. The priest sleeps in his narrow house beside the dark church. 2 miles off, the Lord sleeps behind his bed curtains, propped on his tower of pillows. The whole valley, the whole country, the whole continent is settling into the same first shift of the same long night. And the night itself is on duty around them. The mist thickens along the stream. A fox crosses the lane, pauses, reads the air, moves on. The stars wheel slowly over the thatch, keeping the only time there is. Because every clock in this story, save the church bell, is in the sky. 3 hours pass like this, maybe 4. The fire ticks, the oxen chew and doze and chew. And then, somewhere past the middle of the night, Thomas wakes up. He wakes the way you sometimes do, easily, completely, with no alarm and no reason, into the total dark. And here is the difference between his world and yours. Nothing in Thomas is alarmed by this. He does not groan. He does not calculate the hours left till dawn. He does not lie there rigid, willing himself back down into a sleep that backs away the harder he stares at it. There is no clock on the wall to glare at, no clock in the village at all. Thomas simply notes, with the mild interest of a man checking the weather, that his first sleep is done. This is the moment around which this whole night turns, so let us say it clearly. For Thomas, and for essentially everyone he has ever met, a night of sleep comes in 2 halves with a waking valley between. First sleep, then, in the small hours, an interval of quiet wakefulness, an hour, sometimes more, and then a second sleep that carries you to dawn. Nobody taught him this. Nobody needed to. It is in the sermons he hears and the stories his mother told. Doctors write prescriptions specifying to be taken after first sleep. Court records, when witnesses describe their nights, say it flatly. I had risen after my first sleep, when I heard the voices in the lane. The waking is not an interruption of the night. It is a room of the night, furnished, expected, and oddly loved. Maud stirs beside him, surfacing on the same slow tide. The banked fire ticks. The dark is total and familiar and warm. The watch of the night has begun. So what does a medieval family actually do, awake together in the pitch dark in the middle of the night? Mostly gentle things, half-lit, half-speed things. They lie still and talk first. This is the great hour of married conversation, praised by at least one French physician as the best of all times for ease and confidence between husband and wife. The day's noise gone, the children unconscious, the dark making words easier, as it always has. Thomas and Maud talk about the rent, the rain, the boys' growing feet, the same small ledger as the evening, but slower now and softer. Prayer, for the devout, has a whole office here. The church long ago colonized this wakeful hour and named it, and pious laymen are urged to use it, since prayers in the night's silence were held to fly straighter. Some rise. Maud may feed the baby, or slip out to check a sick ewe, or set the dough by the warm hearthstones to prove for morning. Thomas may mend the fire, feed the buried embers one split log, a small flare of orange in the blackness, then bank it again. Neighbours who are awake sometimes visit one another. There are records of it. Quiet figures crossing the lane. An hour's talk by someone else's embers, then home. And some simply lie there, in the warm dark, doing the oldest thing of all, letting the mind drift, unhooked, hooked, through the middle of the night, reviewing dreams while they are still wet, thinking the long, slow thoughts that daylight never allows. No screens, no clock, no guilt, nothing to optimize. Just an hour that belongs to no one in the very middle of the dark. Now, you may be lying there thinking, wait, is this real? Did people genuinely sleep in 2 shifts for centuries? It sounds like the kind of thing the internet invents. So let us be careful and honest, because the story is genuinely good. A historian named Roger Eckerch spent years in the archives, diaries, court depositions, medical books, prayers, plays, and found the 2 sleeps everywhere. Hundreds upon hundreds of references across England, France, Italy, and beyond, all using the same plain words. First sleep, second sleep, always casually, the way you mention lunch. Nobody ever explains the terms. Everyone is assumed to know. That, for a historian, is the loudest evidence there is. Then came a finding from the laboratories. A sleep researcher named Thomas Ware took modern volunteers and gave them long, artificial winter nights, 14 hours of dark, no electric light. Within weeks, their sleep split itself in 2. A first sleep, a calm waking hour in the middle, a second sleep. Nobody told them to. The pattern simply resurfaced like an old riverbed filling after rain. The picture, then. In a world of long true darkness, human sleep seems happy to fall into 2 acts with an interval. It is not the iron law of nature. People vary, seasons vary, scholars still argue. But it was real, it was everywhere, and it was utterly unremarkable until cheap bright light arrived and slowly squeezed the night into one compressed, anxious 8-hour block. Which means, and here is the gift in tonight's story, if you wake at 3 in the morning, calm and clear-eyed, for no reason at all, nothing whatsoever is wrong with you. You may simply be sleeping like your ancestors. The proper response is theirs too. Do not glare at the clock. Lie back in the dark and keep them company. Let the village rest a while in that middle hour and look around it. In one house, an old woman is awake, as the old often are, sitting wrapped in a blanket by her embers, perfectly content, telling her beads through her fingers, thumb-worn smooth. She has known this hour all her life. It is hers. In another, a young husband and wife are murmuring, forehead to forehead, about the spring. They are expecting their first child, and the middle of the night is where such things are said first. The dough proves on warm stones. A log settles. Somewhere a latch clicks, as a neighbour returns from an hour of talk across the lane. The fox comes back along the hedgerow with something in its mouth. The stars have turned a quarter of their great wheel. No one in this valley is fighting the night. That may be the deepest difference between their sleep and ours. Not the straw, not the fleas, not even the two halves. They did not treat the night as a performance to be scored in the morning. Sleep came in its own shape, and the shape was allowed. A wakeful hour was not a malfunction. It was a feature of the dark, like the owl, like the mist, expected, furnished, and quietly used. The hour empties slowly, like sand. Maud's beads still. The old woman banks her fire. Thomas's thoughts loosen, dissolve, lose their grammar, and one by one, all down the lane, the sleepers slide into the night's second half. Second sleep, the long, soft, dream-rich sleep that runs to morning. But before we follow them down, someone, out there, is still awake. Someone is always awake, and he is paid to be. 5 miles from Thomas's village, there is a market town, a real town, with a wall and gates, and perhaps 2,000 sleepers inside. And walking its empty main street, right now, in the middle of the night, is a man with a lantern, a bell, and a long iron-tipped staff. He is the watchman, and his job all night, every night, is to be the only person awake in a town that is required by law to sleep. The watch is not a glamorous post. It is taken in turn by the townsmen, grumbled about, sometimes paid for to make it go away, a tax you can settle in silver or in sleep. Tonight it belongs to a baker's brother-in-law named John, who is cold and slightly aggrieved and doing the job properly anyway. He walks the circuit slowly. There is no reason on earth to hurry, checking that doors are barred, that no light burns where none should, and above all, always, everywhere, sniffing for smoke. Fire again. The watchman is 9 parts fire warden to 1 part policeman. At intervals he calls the hour, in the long singing drawl that watchmen will still be using 4 centuries from now. The time, the weather, and the eternal reassurance, all in one cry. 3 of the clock, and a fine still night, and all's well. The sleepers behind the shutters hear it without waking, or rather, they hear it the way you hear the furnace switch on. The cry folds itself into their sleep and becomes part of its furniture. A voice in the dark saying, "Someone is awake, so you don't have to be." Every age builds some version of it. Yours hums quietly in the walls and glows on little screens. His walked and carried a bell. The town John is guarding has been formerly asleep since the curfew bell. When it rang at dusk, the gates in the wall swung shut and were barred. Great oak leaves studded with iron, sealing the town like a household. The alehouses were supposed to empty. The fires were covered, and the streets entered their legal night, in which, broadly speaking, an ordinary person is not meant to be out at all. To walk the streets at night without good reason is to be a night walker, an actual legal category, and not a flattering one. honest folk, the thinking runs, are home in bed. Therefore, anyone abroad in the dark is presumed to be up to something, and the watch may stop him, question him, and hold him till morning in the town lockup, with no apology owed. But hear the gentler truth inside the strict rule. Curfew was never absolute, and everyone knew the exceptions by heart. The midwife, hurrying with her bag behind a servant's lantern. The priest, going to a deathbed with the sacrament. The physician. The brewer up early. The traveller with a believable story and a respectable hat. Carry a light, walk like a man on an errand, answer civilly when challenged, and the night will let you pass. The lantern is the key. An honest man shows himself, runs the logic. Only the dishonest love the dark. So the law of the medieval knight is really a single sentence: be home, or be carrying a candle and a good explanation. John the watchman, for his part, has challenged no one for hours. His town lies still as a held breath. He turns down toward the river, where the mist is rising through the bridge. Walk a circuit with him, one slow loop of a sleeping medieval town. It is, honestly, one of the most peaceful walks available in history. The main street first, broad and rutted, moonlight lying in the wheel tracks. Every shop front is shuttered flat. The baker, the cutler, the draper, their painted signs creaking very softly overhead, swinging an inch in the air off the river. Upstairs, behind each shuttered window, the families sleep above their own shops, stacked like cargo. Merchant, wife, children, apprentices in the attic, all breathing in one tall column. Down through the market square, where the stalls stand bare as bones, and a town dog falls into step beside him, companionably, for no reason, the way dogs adopt the night shift everywhere, past the church hugely dark, its tower printed black on the stars. One small lamp burns red inside, far down the nave. The sanctuary light, the one flame in town, allowed to burn all night, because it keeps watch over the altar, and watchmen respect a colleague. Along the wall walk briefly, where he can see over the rooftops, 2,000 people, and not one lit window. Chimney smoke, thin and grey, rising absolutely straight in the still air, from 100 banked fires, the town exhaling in its sleep. Down by the river gate, the mist has pooled chest deep, and the mill wheel stands dripping, locked for the night. John leans on his staff there a while, as watchmen immemorially do. The dog sits. The river says the one thing it knows. Nothing is wrong anywhere. That is the whole report. 3 centuries of poets will get this exact walk wrong as lonely. It isn't lonely. The whole town is here, just asleep. There is an hour, John knows, when the night reaches its lowest ebb. The hour after the moon sets, and before the first false dawn, when the dark stands at full tide, and even the dogs give up on it. The medieval mind kept a respectful eye on this hour. This is the dead of night, and they meant the phrase almost literally. Sermons called it the hour when Christ's tomb lay sealed. Grandmothers called it the hour when the veil thinned. It is the hour assigned in every ghost story of the age, to walking spirits and unquiet souls. The hour when the church bell, if it rang at all, rang for someone's passing. John is a practical man with a practical lantern, and he does not precisely believe the stories. He merely walks a little closer to the middle of the street during this particular hour, as his father did, as you might. And yet the same hour wears another face entirely. For the pious, this deepest dark is the holiest ground of the whole night, the hour of the silent heavens when prayers travel undisturbed. In the town's one small friary, even now, a candle is moving. The brothers are rising for their night office, of which more shortly. Darkest and holiest, most feared and most prized. The same hour, the medieval night holds both without strain. Above John's head, the sky performs its slow, enormous business. The plough has swung low behind the rooftops. A shooting star draws its quick line and is gone, and John notes it automatically. As a soul going up, old arithmetic, the dead of night passes through the town like a long cold wave and breaks and drains away toward morning. All's well. Nobody heard him say it. It was true anyway. How, you might wonder, does anyone in this world know what time it is in the black middle of the night? No clocks on walls, no watches. Hardly any mechanical clocks anywhere yet. The answer is, the night tells you itself if you know its language. And everyone here is fluent. The stars, first. The great wheel turns at a fixed and faithful rate, and a countryman like Thomas can step out, glance up, see how far the plough has swung around the pole star, and come back to bed with the hour held loosely in his head, accurate to within the only precision anyone needs, which is roughly the cocks second. Roosters do not, in fact, crow only at dawn. They crow in relays through the night. First cockcrow, second cockcrow, old waymarks with their own names, trusted since Roman times. The body, third. A man who rises every night after his first sleep becomes his own clock, and wakes within the same half hour year in, year out, the way you wake just before your alarm. And braided through all of it, the bells, from the friary, from the parish church, from the abbey out in the valley, the officers of the night ring out at their stations, and the whole dark countryside takes its time, free of charge, from the prayer schedule of people it has never met. Time in this world is not a number on a screen. It is a texture, star height, cockcrow, bell tone, hunger, habit. Read the way you read a familiar room in the dark, by feel. Nobody knows it is currently 3:41. Everybody knows it is the quiet hour after matins, going on toward the second cockcrow. Honestly, which of those is the better thing to know? At night, the watchman is not quite as alone as he feels. Scattered through the sleeping town, a small secret economy is awake with him. The bakers, first and always. In the bakehouse behind the main street, 2 men are already at the troughs, sleeves rolled in the lamplight. Because bread for a town must rise in the dark to be loaves by morning. The night smells of yeast for a street in every direction, and the watch tends to pause there, by arrangement, where the wall is warm. The brewer's household will be up before cockcrow, stirring the mash. At the inn by the bridge, an ostler dozes upright in the straw among the horses, one ear on duty. On the river, an eelman is out with his lines and his little hooded lamp, which is technically against the curfew and universally ignored. Shepherds, in the hills above the town, sleep beside their folds in turf huts, one eye open against wolves. This is the one trade the nativity stories made famous for it, keeping watch over flocks by night. And carters and drovers move on the long roads by moonlight, when the moon is generous, to make market by dawn. The night shift, in other words, is not a modern invention. It is as old as bread and animals. What is modern is only the brightness we do it under. Theirs was worked by feel and lamplight, in a community of the wakeful so small that all its members practically knew each other, the baker nodding to the watchman to the eelman to the shepherd's distant spark on the hill. A little freemasonry of the awake, holding the night open so the town can close its eyes. John's last circuit brings him back along the wall to the east gate, where his relief will meet him in the grey hour, if he wakes. The town has given him nothing all night, and he is glad of it. One drunk, sleeping in a doorway, steered home by the elbow. One shutter found loose and knocked till the household cursed and fixed it. One cat mistaken briefly for a portent. This is the complete log of the night watch, and it is a good log. It would be easy to think of medieval night as dangerous, and the records do hold their thieves and their tavern brawls. But read enough of those records, the historians tell us, and the larger truth is quieter. Most nights, in most places, nothing happened at all. The system worked. The walls, the watch, the curfew, the lantern law, the barred doors, all of it stacked together into a deep, layered, communal safety, and inside it, 2,000 people slept like one creature. John climbs the gate stair, sets down his lantern, leans his staff, and looks out over the rooftops. One more time. Thatch and tile silvering faintly now, the chimney smoke still rising straight, the river running pewter under the bridge. He yawns, enormously, unprofessionally, with his whole head. In an hour he will hand over the bell, walk home through the waking streets, and climb into the warm hollow his wife has kept, sleeping like a watchman. Which is to say, better than anyone. All's well. The night is past deep point. But out in the valley, in the great stone abbey, the most extraordinary sleepers of the whole medieval world are only halfway through their strange and beautiful night. Let's go and see them. Out beyond the town, where the valley widens, stands the abbey, a great grey ship of stone moored among its fish ponds and orchards, home to some 40 monks and the men who farm their lands. And in the blackest part of the night, while Thomas dreams and John the watchman leans on his staff, a bell rings here. One bell, high in the tower, patient and insistent. It is somewhere past 2 in the morning, and 40 men are getting up. This is the night office. Matins, the monks call it, with its companion, lauds, the long service of psalms, sung in the very middle of every night, winter and summer, feast and famine, every single night of their lives. A monk who enters this abbey at 18 and dies in it at 70 will have risen in the dark at this bell perhaps 19,000 times. Why? Because the rule says so. The rule of Saint Benedict, 900 years old already, which organizes the monk's entire day around 8 services of prayer and plants the greatest of them deliberately, defiantly, in the heart of the dark. At midnight I rose to give thanks unto thee, says the psalm. The monks take it as a schedule. While the world sleeps, someone must be praising God. That is the theory. The monastery is the night watch of Christendom, walking its circuit in plain song instead of boots. In the dormitory, a long bare room above the cloister, 40 narrow beds stir in the blackness. There is a soft groaning of wood and men, a shuffling of feet finding shoes, and no talking. Talking is over for the night. Only the bell speaks. The monks sleep, by rule, in one common room, clothed. That detail is in the rule itself. They sleep in their habits, belted, so that when the bell rings they can rise at once, without delay, and be ready, as the text has it, without their knives, which they sensibly remove, lest they cut themselves in their dreams. A lamp burns in the dormitory all night. Again, the rule requires it. So no one wakes in the dark entirely, and down the middle of the long room they go now, 2 by 2, the older men first. Hoods up, hands in sleeves, into the night stairs, a stone staircase built for this exact moment, leading straight down from the beds into the church. Think of that. The architecture itself contains the routine. A staircase whose whole purpose is the journey from sleep to prayer in the middle of the night. The church receives them, vast and freezing and almost black, 2 candles at the choir, the red spark of the sanctuary lamp, and nothing else but echo and cold stone to the invisible roof. They file into the carved stalls, facing each other across the aisle, and there is a long rustling settle, like birds roosting, and then the voices begin. Antiphonal psalmody. One side of the choir sings a verse, the other side answers, back and forth, slow as breathing, in the dark, for an hour or more. Domini, labia mea aperis. O Lord, open thou my lips. 40 male voices, unaccompanied, half asleep, in a stone room built to make even a whisper hang in the air. At 2:30 in the morning, with the whole valley unconscious around them. It is, by all accounts that survive, one of the most beautiful sounds the Middle Ages ever made, and almost nobody ever heard it. Now, the practical question: how do they survive this? Rising at 2 every night of your life sounds like slow torture. The answer is that the monastery has engineered the whole day around it. And the engineering is rather brilliant. The monks go to bed absurdly early. At dusk or soon after, straight after the day's last office. In winter, that can mean 6 or 7 in the evening. So by the time the matins bell rings, they have already had their first sleep, a good 6 or 7 hours. Sound familiar? It is Thomas's night, formalized. First sleep from dark till the small hours, then the wakeful interval, which the monks fill with the most elaborate version ever devised of what everyone else does in that hour anyway. Prayer, and then, in many houses and many seasons, back to bed for a second sleep between the night office and dawn. Add, in summer, the meridian, the formal midday nap after dinner, written into the rule, taken lying on the beds in silence, and you have a complete alternative architecture of human rest. Not one block, but pieces, arranged around the clock like furniture. Medieval medicine approved. The monks mostly thrived. And modern sleep science, peering back at this schedule, finds it not crazy at all, segmented, flexible, anchored to darkness, heavy on routine and silence and early nights. There are worse sleep hygiene programs on sale today. The deeper point is this. The monastery proves the medieval night was not simply endured. It could be designed. These men took the dark hours the rest of the world waded through and built in them, deliberately, the most ordered life in Europe. The night was their cathedral, and they kept the lights on in it. One small picture from the abbey before we leave it, because it is human, and the night office can sound too marble without it. At the end of the youngest row stands a novice, a boy of 15, 2 months into the life, and he is losing his battle with sleep. The psalms go back and forth above him like slow surf. The candle flames lean and recover. The cold has settled into his feet and given up on them, and his eyelids weigh more than the abbey. He sways, catches himself, sways. The rule and the customaries written after it know all about him. Monastic documents discuss sleepy brothers with the tenderness of men who have been that boy. In some houses, a senior monk walks the choir at intervals with a small lantern and pauses before any sleeper until he wakes. No shouting, no shame, just a light held patiently before closed eyes. The boy surfaces, finds his place in the psalm, sings on. His neighbour, a monk of 60, with a face like a winter apple, shifts half an inch closer, shoulder available, should it be needed. 40 years ago, someone's shoulder did the same for him. History mostly records the Middle Ages awake, its battles, its kings. But here in the dark choir it keeps, by accident, something rarer, the exact texture of being warm-blooded and tired inside a discipline you have chosen anyway. The office ends. The monks file up the night stairs, lie down clothed on their narrow beds, and are asleep in minutes. The deep second sleep of men, with clear consciences and cold feet. The abbey goes dark again. The valley holds it like a stone in its palm. And 5 miles away, at a crossroads inn, a traveller is about to discover the strangest medieval sleeping custom of them all. Come back down the valley, then, to where the 2 roads cross, and a long low building stands with a bush, hung over its door, the old sign of an inn, older than writing on signs. Inside, the common room is down to its embers, and a traveller has arrived late, a wool merchant's clerk named William, damp to the knees, 2 days from home, asking the one question travellers have asked at doors forever. Is there a bed? The innkeeper does not say yes or no. He says something more medieval. He says, "There is room in the bed, not a bed, the bed," and he means it precisely. Up the stairs, in the inn's one great sleeping chamber, stand 3 wide bedsteads, and the night's other guests are already distributed among them. A corn dealer, 2 pilgrims, a friar, and a man who says he deals in horses. William, for his penny, is entitled to a share of mattress, a share of blanket, and whatever portion of the night's warmth his bedfellows have not already claimed. To us this is unthinkable. To William it is Tuesday. Sharing a bed with strangers is, in this century, simply what an inn is. Privacy is not on the menu, because privacy has not been invented, not as a thing a person of ordinary rank could expect to buy. The bed is infrastructure, like the bridge. You share it, like the bridge. William climbs the stairs with a rushlight, counts the sleeping shapes, finds the gap left beside the corn dealer, and pauses only to observe the age's one great courtesy of the shared bed. He takes off his boots. Because there is etiquette here, unwritten, universal, and as finely graded as anything at court. Rule 1. Boots off, spurs off, outer clothes off. A man who climbs into a shared bed booted is a barbarian, and will be remembered as 1 in 3 counties. Rule 2. Choose your side and hold it. The bed is invisible lanes. A sleeper who drifts, who sprawls, who colonizes, he is the night's villain, and the age's letters and jokes are full of him. Rule 3. Lie still, face outward or up, and keep your cold feet to yourself. Feet are mentioned in the records with feeling. Rule 4, and this one is the soul of the institution, a civil word before sleep. Where from? Where bound? How are the roads? Not friendship. Just the small mutual accounting by which each man establishes that the other is ordinary, Christian, and unlikely to rob him. The medieval handshake, lying down. There were failures, of course. The records keep them gleefully. Snorers prosecuted in jest, blanket thieves, a man in one English jest book who complains his bedfellow swore and kicked all night like a horse. Pilgrims' guides warn which inns sleep you 3 to a bed, and which keep fleas the size of beans. But mostly, it worked. Mostly, the bed full of strangers settled itself, lane by lane, into one warm cooperative engine, and everyone got what they had paid their penny for. William exchanges his civil word with the corn dealer, roads bad, wool up, rain coming, and the lanes fall quiet. 5 strangers, 1 blanket weight of warmth, breathing toward morning. A small parliament of the road, adjourned till dawn. Here is the thing to understand, lying among these strangers. For medieval people, the shared bed was not merely tolerated. It had a positive social meaning, almost a warmth of its own. the language remembers it. Bedfellow was a word of standing. To call a man your bedfellow was to claim real intimacy with him. The intimacy of trust, of talk in the dark, of guarded sleep beside you. Kings honoured favourites by sharing the royal bed. It appears in chronicles as a mark of supreme favour, like a seat at the right hand. Servants slept at the foot of their masters' beds or across the door, partly service, partly security, partly simple custom. Apprentices shared beds in every attic in every town in Europe. Students at the new universities slept 2 and 3 to a bed in their cold lodgings. And the college's rules worry not about the sharing, but about the talking after lights out. Companionship in the dark was held to be good for you. Good against fear, good against melancholy, good against the cold, and good, frankly, against the things the night was thought to hold. A bedfellow was a wall with a heartbeat. It will take centuries, and chimneys, and corridors, and cheap candles, and a slow revolution in the very idea of the self before the private bedroom drifts down from the nobility and convinces everyone that sleep is properly done alone. Whether that was entirely progress is a question you may consider tonight in your own quiet room, where the nearest heartbeat may be rooms away or miles. The medieval night, whatever else it lacked, was never lonely. One more sleeping arrangement deserves its portrait, because it is the grandest and the oldest of them all, the hall. In the manor house we visited earlier, below the Lord's curtained chamber, lies the great hall, the high open room at the heart of every large household, where the whole establishment dines, does business, and keeps its fire. And when the trestle tables are cleared and stacked at night, the hall performs its second duty. It becomes a dormitory. Benches are pushed to the walls. Pallets and bags of straw appear from corners where they wait all day, and the household lies down more or less where it worked. The steward near the door, by rank, the kitchen boys in a heap by the banked central fire, the dogs distributed among them by negotiation, the old porter across the threshold itself, where a porter sleeps. 20-30 people, breathing under one black roof, hung with the smoke of 10,000 suppers. This is the most ancient sleeping pattern in northern Europe. Older than the manor, older than the kingdom, the mead hall of the sagas was exactly this. The lord's roof, the shared fire, the company sleeping in a ring around it. Safety made out of numbers and one stout door. By Thomas's day, the great folk have begun withdrawing to private chambers, the Lord upstairs behind his curtains, and moralists are already complaining about it, grumbling that the Lord, who dines and sleeps apart from his people, has broken something old and warm that held the household together. They were probably right, as grumblers often are. But the hall sleeps on regardless tonight. A whole society in one room, stacked by rank, warmed by one fire, dreaming in formation. And the smallest sleepers of this world, where are they? The baby, first, In Thomas's house, the baby sleeps, as we saw, in the bed against Maud's arm, but it also has a cradle, a small oak rocker made by Thomas's own father, standing by the hearth where the warmth pools. Babies are swaddled, wrapped firm, in long linen bands, arms and all, into a tidy, calm, portable parcel. The wrapping is believed to straighten growing limbs and settle the spirit, and a swaddled child, the mothers will tell you truthfully, sleeps sounder and startles less. A cradle by the fire, a parcel snug infant, a foot rocking it in that absent automatic rhythm, while the hands spin wool. Some pictures need no translation across 6 centuries. Older children sleep wherever the household's geometry puts them. A shared pallet, a loft over the byre reached by ladder, the warm shelf above the oven in richer houses, in with the grandmother, in with each other, always, again, together. A child of this world falls asleep nightly inside an audible crowd of its own kin, and the historians who study such things suggest it shaped them a basic, bone-deep assumption that one is accompanied in this life. There are lullabies, real ones, written down, some surviving still, soft repetitive verses, in which mothers promise impossible things, exactly as they do now. Lullaby. The oldest ones begin lullaby, lullaby. The word is older than the houses, older than the language around it. It may be the oldest, continuously used piece of night equipment the human species owns, and it still works. You may even be feeling it work right about now. Let us talk, in this quietest stretch of the night, about what medieval doctors actually believed sleep was, because they had a complete theory, wrong in nearly every detail, and yet somehow pointed, again and again, at the right advice. The body, taught the physicians, is governed by 4 humours: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, black bile, and by qualities of heat and cold, moisture and dryness. Sleep, in this system, is the body's inward turning. When you sleep, the natural heat withdraws from the limbs and gathers in the stomach and the inner organs, which is why sleep follows a meal, why the sleeping body feels cool, and why sleep is when digestion does its great work, concocting food into blood like a slow pot on a banked fire. Notice, it is the same image again. The banked fire. The medieval sleeper is a hearth at night. Heat drawn in, covered over, conserved till morning. A culture explains the body with whatever it tends at home. From this theory flowed the rules. Sleep warm and covered, for the surface of the body is cool and undefended at night. Sleep on the right side first, to lay the stomach on its proper furnace. Do not sleep straight after eating heavily, nor study straight before bed, for a working brain draws the heat upward, and the supper spoils below. Wrong mechanism, oddly sound advice. Keep regular hours. Don't eat huge meals late. Wind the mind down before bed. Stay warm. 600 years of medical revolution later, the pamphlet in the doctor's waiting room says, roughly that. The humours are gone. The hours, it turns out, were the medicine. and when sleep would not come anyway. For medieval people also lay awake, with toothache, with grief, with the rent. The age had its remedies, a whole gentle pharmacy of them. Lettuce, first, the unlikely king of medieval sleep aids. The milky juice of wild lettuce was held to cool the brain and invite drowsiness, eaten at supper, or drunk in a posset, and the books recommend it constantly. Then the great soporific herbs, warm milk infusions, and syrups, chamomile, vervain, betony, valerian root above all, rank-smelling and reliable, which modern pharmacology, slightly embarrassed, confirms does something. Poppy, too, for serious cases. The medieval doctor knew the poppy well, and used it with respectful caution, in syrups against pain and sleeplessness. Gentler still, the household methods. A nightcap of warm spiced ale or wine, lavender and rose petals sewn into the pillow, feet washed in warm water before bed, prescribed in so many texts that it must have been half of Europe's actual routine. And, for the wakeful mind, the priest's remedy, the psalter. Recite the psalms in order, slowly, until you lose your place. Count psalms, count prayers, count the beads through your fingers. The rosary is, among its higher purposes, a magnificent sleep machine. Repetition smoothing the mind flat like a hand, smoothing a blanket. Counting sheep is merely what was left when the prayers fell away from the counting. Warm drink, warm feet, a scented pillow, a slow repeated text. No pill in this pharmacy, you notice, only ritual. And ritual, the one drug that never lost its license, is being administered to you at this very moment. The medieval sleeper, drifting down into second sleep, expected to dream, and took dreams far more seriously than we do. A dream, in this world, is not yet a private chemical accident. It is a message, the only open question being, from whom? The scholars sorted dreams into kinds, in systems inherited from antiquity. Some dreams, they taught, are merely bodily. The supper speaking, the humours out of balance. A man who dreams of fire has too much choler. A man who dreams of drowning, too much phlegm. These mean nothing, and the doctor may adjust your diet. But other dreams come from outside the sleeper. Dreams sent by God, to warn and guide. Scripture was full of them. Joseph's ladder of dreams running straight through the Old Testament. And dreams sent by the enemy, to deceive and frighten, which is why dreaming of the dead, or of treasure, or of great fortune was handled carefully, like a letter with no signature. Dream books circulated everywhere, alphabetical keys to the night, copied and recopied. To dream of teeth falling means loss of kin. To dream of clear water, good fortune. Of muddy water, trouble. Of flying, freedom from care. People consulted them exactly as seriously, and exactly as half seriously, as their descendants consult horoscopes. What this gave the medieval knight was significance. Sleep was not downtime. It was a second country, with weather and visitors and news worth bringing back. Thomas, deep in second sleep now, is dreaming of ploughing a furrow that never ends under a kind sky. The dream book would say it promises steady gain. The dream book, for once, is probably right. We cannot speak honestly of medieval sleep without one figure who haunted it. So be warned and be reassured. Nothing in this scene will hurt anyone. It never did. Sometimes a sleeper of this age would wake in the dark and find that he could not move. A weight on the chest, breath short. A presence in the room, felt rather than seen. Terror, total and wordless. And then, after some seconds, release. You may know this experience. Millions do. We call it sleep paralysis, the body's sleep switch lingering on a few seconds after the mind wakes. Harmless, brief, and famously terrifying. The Middle Ages knew it intimately and gave it a name and a face. The mare, a creature of the night that comes and sits upon sleepers' chests. The being that rides you in your sleep. And when the experience needed a stronger word, they joined the mare to the night itself and gave us, permanently, the word nightmare. Against the mare, the age deployed its usual sturdy toolkit. Prayers at bedtime, the sign of the cross over the pillow. A charm spoken at the window. Iron near the bed. A knife, a horseshoe. For iron was proof against the unseen. A stone with a natural hole in it, hung by the bedstead. A hagstone keeping watch. Did the charms work? In the way that mattered? Yes, actually. The sufferer woke, gripped the hagstone, said the words, felt the terror drain into a known container with a known remedy, and went back to sleep, which is, give or take a label, exactly what a modern sleep clinic recommends. Understand the thing, name it, reduce its fear, resume sleeping. The mare has long since retired. The word still carries her saddle. And the remedy was never really the iron. It was the naming. It always is. One more truth about medieval sleep, easy to miss from inside our heated homes. It changed completely with the seasons. Their night had weather. Winter first. In December, in England, darkness runs some 16 hours out of the 24. 16 hours, of which even a champion sleeper can fill only 9 or 10. The medieval winter night was simply too big for sleep, and the two-sleep pattern stretched out luxuriously inside it. Early to bed in the long dusk, a deep first sleep, a generous wakeful hour, a long second sleep, and still the dark held. Winter was the season of the night watch hour, at its fullest, the great era of fireside tales, of spinning by ember light, of the long lying in that the books called, approvingly, keeping warm. Whole trades went quiet. The village half hibernated, spending darkness the way it spent stored grain, slowly together. Summer reversed everything. In June, the dark shrinks to 6 hours, and the harvest will not wait. Men rose at first light or before, worked the great daylight through, and slept short, patching the difference with the midday rest in the field shade, the nap the monks had institutionalized as the meridian. 2 different sleeps. Then, a long segmented winter sleep, a short hard summer sleep, with a noon patch, swinging with the planet year after year, lifetime after lifetime. The fixed 8 hours every night, July and January alike, is an industrial invention. Sleep by factory whistle. Their sleep had a tide. Yours still wants one, by the way. You feel it every winter, that pull toward earlier dark and longer rest, a 600-year-old reflex, politely ignoring the light switch. Suppose, just for amusement, in this drowsiest corner of the episode, that Maud could stand for one night in your bedroom and watch how you sleep. What would astonish her? Not the comfort. She would understand the comfort instantly, run a hand over the mattress, weigh the duvet, nod with expert approval. This, she would say, is the bed of a great lord. Well done. No, what would astonish her is everything else. The silence first, no breathing but yours, no children, no servants, no beasts beyond the wall, no village beyond the shutter. A silence so total, she would ask, gently, where everyone had gone, and whether you were quite safe, sleeping in an empty room like a hermit, or like the dead. Then the light, the small lamps burning all night for no one, in the hallway, on the little screen by your pillow, blinking on the wall. Light, to Maud, is money burning. She would go around blowing things out. Then the clock, the glowing numbers watching you all night, and the way you look at them when you wake and wince and do arithmetic against the morning, and call the night a failure because it came, as nights always have, in 2 pieces. That, I think, would genuinely sadden her. You have the bed of a lord, she would say, and the night of a prisoner, counted, lit, guarded, and alone. It would not be entirely fair. She would be missing the furnace, the medicine, the long safe years our nights ride on. But as you lie there now, warm in your great lord's bed, it is worth borrowing her eyes for 1 minute more. The clock can face the wall, the night can come in pieces, and nothing about the dark needs counting. Step back with me now, high above the valley, the wide night view, the one the owl has, and look at what 6 centuries actually changed. Below us, in the dark, the medieval night is working everywhere at once. Thomas and Maud, in their second sleep behind the barred door, the children breathing in formation on their pallet, John the watchman, calling 4 of the clock to no one, the monks back in their dormitory, the inn's strangers, truced under one blanket, the baker floured to the elbow, the shepherd's fire, a red star on the hill. A whole civilization lying down in the dark together, trusting the walls, the watch, the charms, the prayers, and each other. Here is the long view. Sleep has a history. It is not a constant of nature, the same in every age. It is a custom, like cooking, like marriage, and every century seasons it differently. They slept twice, we sleep once. They slept together, we sleep apart. They feared the dark and filled it with company. We banished the dark and filled it with light and scroll in it, alone. Neither night is simply better. Theirs was colder, itchier, shorter on medicine, and longer on fear. Ours is safer and softer than anything they could dream, and lonelier and brighter and harder to switch off. But the sleeper at the center is the same creature, unchanged, warm-blooded, story-hungry, comforted by voices, undone by the small hours, still reaching at day's end for the same three ancient things: warmth, safety, and somebody near. You have all three tonight, in your own arrangement. The medieval night is nearly over now. All that remains is the morning, and it comes gently. Back down, then, one last time, through the thinning dark, to the house at the lane's end, where the second sleep holds the household in its deepest, softest grip. Second sleep is different in kind, and they knew it. First sleep is the labourer's sleep, heavy, dreamless, dropped into like a well. Second sleep is lighter, longer feeling, woven through with dreams. Dot the sleep in which the mind, its hard repairs already done, is free to wander and embroider till dawn. The physicians said, the morning sleep concocts the subtler humours. The dream book said, morning dreams are the truthful ones, worth telling at breakfast. Both were guessing, and both had noticed something real, for the science of our own day agrees that the night's last hours run rich with dreaming. The house has changed its sound. The fire is far down now, a faint warm presence more remembered than heard. The oxen are still. Even the mice have closed their accounts. Only the breathing continues, slow and braided, 5 sleepers at 5 tempos under one thatch, and the baby stirs once, is patted twice, and settles without either of them truly surfacing. An exchange conducted entirely on the night's lower frequencies. Outside, the sky is performing its oldest trick. In the east, low down, the black has turned. Not light yet, nothing so committed, merely a doubt about the darkness. The first birds are clearing their throats, one at a time, like an orchestra arriving early. The night is not over, but it has begun to think about the morning, and you need not follow it there. Your business tonight is with the other direction. The rooster makes the decision, as he has made it every morning since long before these fields had names. From the dunghill by the byre wall, the first crow, ragged and magnificent, flung up against the grey. A neighbour's bird answers across the lane. Then another, farther, and another, the parishes relaying it outward across the whole slow-waking county. The oldest alarm network in the world, wireless, self-maintaining, and impossible to switch off. This is Cockcrow, the boundary stone of the night. In the towns, the gates unbar at it. On the roads, carters yoke up by it. In the abbey, the brothers are rising for prime, the morning office. The law itself uses it. Deeds and depositions date events from Cockcrow as solemnly as from noon. Thomas wakes inside the sound, easily, completely, the way he woke at midnight. A man whose body keeps the village's hours without being asked. He lies a moment in the warmth, taking the morning's bearings, rain holding off by the sound of the eaves, Monday, by the inner ledger. Threshing then. He is up. The floor is cold. The shutter, unpegged, lets in a slice of pewter light and the smell of wet fields. Behind him, Maud is at the hearth already, kneeling at the banked fire. And this is the morning's first small ceremony, the mirror of the evening's last. The ash drawn back, the embers, alive all night under their grey blanket, breathed upon, fed straws, coaxed, and the flame stands up, and the house has its heart back. The fire did it, the whole night, asleep but alive, exactly as everyone had trusted it to be. The day may now begin, but not ours. Ours ends here. One question remains, and it deserves an answer in the telling. If everyone slept in two halves for 1,000 years and more, where did it go? Why have you never heard of it? The short answer is light. It went slowly, the way customs go. First the cities brightened, oil lamps on the street corners, then gas, mile upon mile of it, pushing the useful evening later and later. Coffee arrived, and the coffee house, the theatre, the assembly room, the lit shop window. The evening became a place to spend money, and bedtime retreated before it, hour by hour, decade by decade. And here is the simple arithmetic that killed the first sleep. Go to bed at 9, and the night is long enough to hold 2 sleeps with a wakeful hour between. Go to bed at midnight, and it is not. The night was squeezed from both ends. Evening lamps on one side, factory whistles and railway timetables on the other, until the 2 sleeps were pressed together into one block, and the waking hour between them was simply evicted. By the 1800s, doctors who met the old pattern in their patients had begun to call it a disorder. The night that every medieval village kept became, within 3 generations, a symptom. And so today, when you wake at 3 in the morning, clear-headed, for no reason, you have been taught to call it insomnia and to lie there counting the cost. Your great-great-grandmothers, 30 generations of them, would have called it the watch, and used it, and slept again. Nothing is wrong with you at 3 in the morning. You are keeping, briefly, an abolished holiday. Keep it kindly, and let the second sleep come when it comes. It knows the way. It has had 600 years of practice. So, how did medieval people sleep? Let the night answer one last time, in order, as the drowsiness gathers. They slept when the dark said so, early down, late up, the night worn loose like a winter cloak, with room inside it. They slept on straw and wool and feathers, by rank, in beds that were treasures, named in wills, made fresh each morning, like a promise kept. They slept together, always together. Family in the bed, children at arm's reach, strangers truced at the inn. The household ringed around the hall fire. Nobody, from the king to the shepherd, slept beyond the sound of another person breathing. They banked the fire and barred the door, and said the words. Small ceremonies against the dark, performed nightly, without fail, until safety became a habit, and the habit became sleep. They slept in 2 acts, with an hour of soft waking between, and they used that hour for everything quieter life requires. Prayer, talk, bread set to rise, thoughts let off the leash, and when sleep failed them, they did not declare war on the night. Warm milk, warm feet, a scented pillow, a slow-counted prayer, they treated sleeplessness as weather. It passed. It always passed. Strip away the centuries, and their whole craft of sleep comes down to 3 instructions, still in working order. Keep the night dark. Keep the bed warm. Keep each other close. That is everything they knew. It is nearly everything anyone knows, and it is all, every word of it, already working on you. The village is behind us now. Thatch and smoke and pewter sky sinking back into the long dark of 600 years, and it does not need us anymore. It never did. Thomas is at his threshing. Maud's fire is lit. The watchman is home asleep. The abbey bell is ringing for someone else. You, though, you are exactly where they all were trying to get. Warm, safe, lying down, with the whole night ahead of you and nothing left to guard. So take the medieval night with you as you go. The fire is banked. The door is barred. The watch has called the hour, and the hour is all's well. If sleep comes in one piece tonight, let it. If it comes in two, now that the old night had a room for that, furnished and waiting, and nothing in it to fear. Either way, the second sleep is patient. It will find you. This has been the Sleepy Archive. Thank you for keeping the watch with me a while, and letting the oldest customs in the world do their slow, certain work. The lamp is going out now, the way all good lamps go, gently, and without any hurry at all. Sleep well, sleep deep, and I'll see you in the next quiet hour. Good night.